Quality time, quality time.
The records.
Oh, you all mine.
All right, so welcome to Quality Time. And today is a special edition where we have quality time with quality women, where we get it straight from the the horse's mouth about what quality women really want in men so that they can have fulfilling relationships with them. Today, I'm very lucky and honored to have my guest be the beautiful, smart, lovely, ambitious Leslie Chen.
Thank you.
No, thank you for joining me. Cool. Leslie, you used to be an ex-management consultant. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And now you run ricelean.com, where you help ambitious, busy women lose up to a half pound a day by eating delicious Asian food.
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
That sounds too good to be true.
I know. But see, that's why it's worth pursuing, because it's scary, right?
No, absolutely. You know, if it seems too good to be true, it's either one, too good to be true, or really kick ass. And I've seen your food, and I can tell that it actually is really kick ass.
Yep, I agree.
It's good. If you didn't, you'd have problems. I don't know how you'd run your business.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, I want to try some of your recipes. I got to get some of them from you because they look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you were born in mainland China, but you moved to the States 11 years ago?
Yep.
That's cool. And you've been there ever since, the whole 11 years, or back and forth?
Well, actually, it's back and forth. I came here for college. Well, I'm disclosing my age, sort of, but I came here for college.
You look 21. As far as I'm concerned, you're 21. I think anyone who sees it will think you're 21.
Just a small correction, 18.
Fine. Hey, you can't drink in the States then, but that's up to you. If you don't want to be able to go for a drink, fine.
All right. So anyway, I came here back in 2005 for college, and after 4 years, I went to Shanghai, which is where you're in now.
Oh.
And I was in Shanghai working for 2 years, and I came back to the States, and I have been here ever since. So yeah, it's a little back and forth.
That's cool, but 11 years is a long time, so you're kind of a veteran. I'm sure, especially from talking with you, that you understand Western culture, dating culture in comparison to Chinese dating culture. We've discussed that. You're quite versed on both of them.
Yeah, I can say that.
Wow, I can tell, because I've talked to you enough to know your personality, and when I was lucky enough to meet you in real life, you're even more beautiful in real life, so it's obvious. It's just true. It's taller than I thought too, I have to say. It's just true that I can tell there's probably a lot of dudes who are interested in you, as you were growing up and developing in this world.
I sort of agree with you.
Oh, I'm sure you're being very humble. I'm sure there were tons you had to beat them off with a stick.
Okay.
So we met in an online business course where you took an interest in me being in China, and I took an interest in you being Chinese and telling me all sorts of stuff about that. We've had many a late night conversation about different topics, including dating in Western and Chinese cultures and how that's different. We'll probably talk on that a little bit later.
Right.
Actually, you suggested at one time that I start a workshop here called How to Date a Foreign Guy. Which, when you're removed from situations here, it sounds like a cool, interesting idea. But the fact of the matter is that it was a little bit controversial here and got me in a little bit of hot water on Chinese social media. Although I did get interviewed by the Wall Street Journal here in China. That was interesting.
Yeah, that's sort of like an adventure, right? Because when I was thought about it, based on my experience in Shanghai, I thought that would be a really cool idea. And what I didn't expect is that you actually got a lot of ambush from like foreign crowds in Shanghai, right? Not the local crowds. I mean, local girls probably appreciate that business, but
Yeah, all the
yeah, go ahead.
exactly all the women that signed up were local girls. Although it wasn't necessarily designed for that. But yeah, there was a lot of like expat backlash on that, which was surprising because I didn't think that they would care. But you know, there are a lot of guys who want to be white knights and come to save everyone. Oh, there's nothing wrong ever. I'm going to have your back on anything, so then you'll really like me. And so, you know, whatever, like, fuck those
Yeah.
guys. There was one Chinese guy who sent me a message being like, oh, so quote unquote, how many bitches went to your event?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, you're telling me I'm bad for putting this on, but you're talking about the women who showed up like that. Like, is there a bit of a double standard? Are you projecting a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
hypocrite much?
And I think that ties back to the same topic that we have today, right? Quality time was quality woman. And when I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand it when you say, you know, when you kind of have a dating related business and you try to get the opportunity to get more women, right? Having more relationship experience. A lot of people just kind of think of it as by default something like having like one night stand experience, whereas it's really not necessarily not necessarily like that. So a lot of times it's about, well, I think a challenge that you kind of have to overcome is about how do you position and how do you brand your business, like the one that you're currently having, in a way that makes sure that people are not going to overthink too much. And I think you have a very good definition about quality woman.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will get into that in a second. And I do agree. Like, there's tons of websites out there that are like, oh, get laid as soon as possible. Get laid tonight. The one date, get laid, one night system. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. For guys who don't get laid very often, I guess that sounds wicked. But if you get laid regularly, it's kind of like, that's actually not the best, because the intimacy, the sexual tension, and the respect that men have for women who make them work a little bit in order to get them, like not ridiculous amounts, but just enough where it's not like, yeah, I got this already. It's too easy. Like to the point where they're actually like, you know, maybe I will consider something more with this. Is just better overall. It's just better overall. So I think that sort of thinking is kind of flawed, in that it can hurt a lot of guys actually with women that they would actually want to date in the long term, because they develop these habits. And I've made these mistakes in the past with women that I was interested in the long term, by following these same habits that worked before to get laid that night, with women that are just like, that's like all you really want, really? That's it? It's like, well, I guess they're going to pass and move on. It's like, I didn't mean to be that immature and short-sighted, but it was just kind of like a habit. So the idea of being able to create an actual relationship and sustain it and enjoy that for what it is, more so than just be like, yeah, I want to get laid right now, ASAP, in the bathroom, at this nightclub or bar. Sounds cool. I'll tell you, it sounds cool, but the actuality of it is not as cool as it sounds.
Okay, good to know.
So I personally think it's better. So yeah, that's why I say it's date quality women. It's not get laid tonight with random women, because there's a big business out there for that, and I'm not against it. It's cool, you know, if that's what you want. But if you're more interested in creating actual relationships with women you might be interested in the long term, then it takes a little bit different thinking, a little bit different skills, a little bit more of a slow burn. It's similar, but what will get you laid in a nightclub bathroom might not get you the girlfriend of your dreams. And I'm just saying it's a little different. That's all I'm saying.
I actually haven't thought about that at all when I was earlier when I was dating. I've never thought about having this experience of, you know, meeting one guy in a bathroom in a bar and just do that in the bathroom. It's just not something that I would logically think to myself, or it's, yeah. So I agree with you that if you're having that logic, or if you're having that kind of expectation, it's probably not going to get you anywhere when it comes to having a quality relationship.
For sure. And that's why you're in this hangout. why other women who I'm not saying it's bad to do that or that there aren't good women who want to have an experience and do that. I'm just saying that the woman you're hooking up with in the nightclub bathroom recently is probably not going to be your future girlfriend or wife. That's all I'm saying. I'm just, if I had to be a gambling man and put a bet on it, I would say they're probably not one and the same. And that is probably going to be a little bit different dating them. Since you never thought of it, you know, I'm going to say that's probably a good thing. I'm not against it. I'm not judging of people who do it. I'm just saying that, you know, if I hooked up with a woman in the nightclub bathroom, I probably wouldn't think of her as quote unquote girlfriend material. That's all I'm saying. And I think most guys would agree with me on that. Most men, I think would agree with me on that. So, you are married to a very lucky man.
Yep. For how many years so far? 7 years.
7 years. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't feel that long though.
Time flies, especially when you're having fun and you're in a great relationship. Maybe that makes it go faster. I don't know.
Could be.
So can you tell us how you met?
It's a very long story short. We met when I was still we met online when I was still in China. So I was a high school student back then. Can you still hear me?
Yep. Uh-oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, got you back. There we are.
You lost me, right?
Yeah.
Well, the internet just went off. Anyway, so what was the last line you heard?
You met back when you were in Shanghai online.
Oh, okay. So not in Shanghai, but I was back in China in high school at that time. So one day I was dumped by my ex, one of my ex.
What a fool.
I was a high, so I started kind of early, right? And that was a bad day. I got found out by the teacher that was dating when I was not supposed to be, because in China it was strictly forbidden that you have this, dating relationship with another. Even though I wouldn't call it dating, but you're not supposed to have anything other than quote unquote friendship with another person of the different sex. So the teacher found it out. I got scolded really hard, and I came back trying to find somebody online to just pour everything onto him. That was a very bad habit I used to have back then. No longer doing it. But that's
I feel like
what
I'm
happened.
that person now, Leslie. I'm that person now.
I'm so sorry if I made you feel that way. Not trying to kind of pour anything onto anybody for sure, but back then that was what I really needed on that day, because think about it, you had no friends you can talk about it with because it was almost secretive, and you couldn't talk about it with your parents because your parents will be like, time out, right? You're in the bathroom for an hour or two. So what I did is I went on to ICQ. So back in the old days, we're still using ICQ here. So on ICQ there was this very interesting.
That's how I met my first girlfriend, by the way, too. I met my first girlfriend on ICQ as well.
Interesting. So we're around the same age group.
You look much younger than me, though.
Oh, thank you. So what happened is ICQ had this very cool feature called random search. So I click on random search. So I click on that. You don't have to put in anything there. You just click on it. Then about a couple of seconds later, somebody popped up. So this guy, I knew it was a guy because his nickname was Lone Wolf. And I was thinking, what kind of poets can it be, right? And then I was telling myself, it's just going to be like one conversation. After I pour everything onto this guy and feel better, I'm going to block him. So that poor guy was my husband.
Oh,
girl. I didn't know that was my husband until a few years later, because basically what happened is I had a very one-way conversation with him, telling him what was exactly going on, how bad I felt about myself and what had happened. he didn't say much, and I left the conversation. About a month later, somebody pinged me on ICQ asking, "Are you feeling better?" I was like, "What the heck? Who the heck are you?" Right? And then I started remembering this lone wolf, that first impression. And but he didn't seem to be a guy who he didn't sound like a pervert during our conversation. So that's why I was more friendly to him, and we had this conversation, and eventually I know that he was a college student. He's, based on the conversation, I could sense that he was not a pervert at all. That's how we remained to be just online buddies for a while. I'd say for a while means 3 years, actually.
Wow.
So 3 years later, I came to the States for college. That's when we first met. And then he asked me out for a date. And I said yes.
How did he ask
So
you?
that's how go ahead.
How did he ask you?
Oh, that was a very interesting instance. It was the first week. Yes, it was the first week once I moved here. We had this, back then we were still using MSN. Remember that? Remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
So time we were having a camera conversation. He's actually I would say he's not a very outspoken guy. A little introverted, not so much though. But back at that time, he asked me out through the MSN chat window, when we still had a video camera on, and we were both muted. I think we were both very afraid of like speaking out and letting the other person hear us. I was
just a video
college
with
freshman.
chat.
A video with chat, yes. It was completely weird, I know it. But that's how that day he went back to his home in Philly. So we had this video on, and he started taking his family album in front of the camera and telling me that this is my aunt, this is my mom, this is my dad, basically pointing out people on the pictures. And I was like, what are you trying to do? Because that's something unfamiliar. I don't need to know your family member and your family tree. But then after that short episode, he asked me, is it possible that we can have a date? And that was a little unexpected, because out of 3 years of knowing each other online, you didn't do that. But all of a sudden, right, coming from nowhere, you started making this. You made this request. So I said I have to think about it, because I literally do not know you. Then after. What?
That's something interesting I'd like to touch on after your story, about how like you were in contact for years, but then what you describe as out of the blue, he asks you for a date. Like you didn't have any idea that he was interested in you?
I think he was he hid it pretty well. And because it was online, and we were not chatting every day. It's mainly like 2-hour conversation or 1-hour conversation during the weekend, when both of us were free. And in terms of being interested, I would say we made good conversationalists when being with each other. But without being one-on-one together, it was really difficult to feel that chemistry. Plus that we didn't really talk too much about relationship. He once had a crush on this girl in the West Coast, where he was in the East Coast, right? And I actually encouraged him to fly over to the West Coast and have that date with her. That was before I was in the States.
Okay.
So that was a year, I think 2 years before I came to the States. So I'm more like the friend or secretive, like female friend type of role. And I say secretive because we were online, and you don't really talk to your friends about your online friends, right? So that was the role I kind of defined for myself. And all of a sudden, he was like, "Can we go?" Like he asked me out, and was like, "It's a kind of hard, difficult role switch. That's just gonna happen suddenly," and I wasn't sure whether that was going to be a good idea at all. Plus, I just came to the States, and there was so much to learn, and so many new things to get adapted to, right? So that's why I kind of hesitated a little bit.
Okay, interesting.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
so like a lot of guys, what they do is they try to hide out in the friend zone for a while and then hope to sneak their way in there. I mean, this is one of those few instances where it actually turned out. It often doesn't turn out that well. Because like you said, you kind of felt like blindsided by it. But then also you were new there, so you wanted to have your chance to experience and see what they had to offer. So like,
Yeah, I was totally unprepared for that, and literally I didn't know him. Like we had this video chat or typing for almost 1 year back then, but still, what does this person feel like? And this person feels like unreal because everything just happened on the internet, right?
so you don't know someone until you meet them. So I guess it's kind of important if you meet on the internet or a dating app or something that he get together with you in some sort of timely manner so that you can get to know him in person. Otherwise, it just doesn't mean anything, it seems like.
That's not that it doesn't mean anything, probably meaningful in certain ways because we still had good conversations. And I feel like whenever there was something wrong, like hardship or adversity happening in real life, I still have a person that I can fall back to on the internet world. But again, internet is the internet, right? This is why when I flew to Shanghai last year, the first thing when I was in Shanghai was to meet with you, like face to face in person. Right. That's why, because I felt like there has to be meetings, like real meetings, in order for a relationship to come true.
That's right. Which was very nice. It was lovely of you to come and visit me. And you looked amazing. I was immediately jealous of your husband, immediately.
Thank you so much. I say that on his behalf, though.
Just try to tell him, like, high five and give him a high five. Good job, buddy.
Make sure he watches this video.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if he needs to. He kind of already sort of hit the lottery, so like, it's okay. But he can if he likes. If he needs to be reminded to be appreciative, remember. What's his name? Something. Cajun. Remember. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, you guys met on the internet, and then you chatted for these years. And even after these years, you're kind of surprised that he took interest in you, which is, from a guy's point of view, is ridiculous. Because the only reason a guy talks to a woman for like any extended amount of time is generally for the opportunity of some kind of relationship. And if she doesn't understand at that point, the guy's kind of like, "What are you talking about?" Which is a really important lesson for guys. So a lot of guys are scared to show. They're scared to show her that they're interested. So one thing they really need to do is they need to, one, show their intention a little bit so she understands that you're interested. Otherwise, she might assume you're not. And two, like, look, if they haven't met already, look to get together in whatever is some sort of reasonable time frame so that she does see you as a person and not just a pen pal. Because if he had never asked you that, you might still be talking to him on the internet today.
And that's true. That is true. Actually, I think that goes back to one of the very interesting questions that has been there for ages, which is there real friendship between men and women, right? Because the situation that you described just now, that man would just only talk to a woman when there's an interest, it's only valid when the assumption that there's no pure friendship between men and women is valid.
Yeah, my personal opinion, in platonic relationships, one always wants the other and one is generally saying no. Or they're both in relationships already, and so it's just like taboo for them. But if they both ended up not in relationships, then they might end up together.
Yeah, and then there was another barrier back then. It's a distance. Think about it. I was 12 to 13 hours ahead of him, right? And we were on different sides of the world. So back then, I would say if I were still in China today, there was no chance that we would have this relationship at all, just because of that barrier. So that's why when we were chatting, neither of us had the foresight that one day we could be in the same place on Earth. So that's probably why we were not really thinking in that direction. But whenever there is a situation where you need some advice from a total outsider of your world, probably a buddy on the internet world will be a good fit.
Yeah, it could be. That's not bad. I mean, I think we've all been there. I don't know if it's the best advice to take random people's advice from the internet, but if you want to blow off some steam and drop your mad problems onto some random guy online, there's no better place to find one.
That's true.
Cool. So that sounds like a nice story that worked out. So you said that he's kind of like the quiet sort of type. You said a little bit introverted. So what was it about him that drew you to him then?
All right, so a couple of things. All right, so when it comes to relationships, any type of relationships, one thing that really matters to me is the influence. Okay, so for example, this kind of conversation that you and I are having, what kind of influence is happening for both you and me? Is it something mutually beneficial in the sense that it makes us, both of us, grow together, right? So when I was with him, something that really inspired me was that, like, you can feel that there is an influence going on. For example, I'm a history person. He's also a history person as well. He loves history as much as I do. So there is this common interest where we can constantly talk about and debate against with each other on, right? However, the way that we look at history was totally from very different angles. Now, for him, it's about understanding and analyzing certain events, why it happened. For me, it's about going into the deep, like, psychology of that historical figure, right? So these two type of things, this under two type of angles and two different understandings about history, kind of became compatible with each other. So just through a simple conversation where we're talking about history, we kind of grew so much in terms of our understanding, right? Bring different perspectives together. So that's just a miniature about how we were able to influence each other in the everyday life. When I first got to the States, it was difficult for me because of you went to China, so you know what is the steep culture contrast was like. A lot of unknowns, a lot of time you feel like being awkward, a lot of time you don't get the jokes. So he actually helped me by introducing a bunch of stand-up comedians, saying that you should listen to their jokes so that you can understand the culture and the slangs better. And that's how I kind of started getting into the culture. So it all happened in everyday life. There was not one, I don't recall any one instance where he came to me with a wow factor. There was no wow factor there. Okay, so it's just a little bit these little things in everyday life and how we interacted with each other. So one thing I talked about is influence, right? The other thing is the sense of responsibility. I'd say that aka maturity. I think one way you can tell whether a man has enough maturity is to see how he deals with difficulties and pressure. Really, I don't put guys in a situation of stress just to test that out. But when there is a situation like that happening, I'm really paying attention to how he's responding to it. So these two things were something that I would say attracted to me the most, because whenever there was something, even those things that I felt was a big matter back then, and I would get a little panic, he would be the one who was, being grounded and holding himself up strong, and that's how you get through those moments, right? So these are two major things that pulled me closer to him.
Awesome. So you said first one was responsibility.
The first one was influence.
Sorry, influence.
Exactly. What kind of experience it is when you're dating this guy? Right? If you are having this 55 minutes, but 50 or an hour conversation with him, is there something that you're learning from him? And it doesn't have to be the actual knowledge, though. It can be some like positiveness that you can feel from this person. Like, what exactly is this person like? How does he feel? And does it make you, what kind of sensation does it cause you to have? Is it like, does it make you more confident? Does it make you more curious? Or does it make you feel judged in a way? Or does it make you feel weak? There are different combinations, right? I'll say that their personality is so diverse. Like for you, Brian, you're not a person who is only confident, right? There are some times when you are confident, positive, but there are also times when you are down, right?
Never.
How do you? Yeah, I believe that. So how do you pack up your personal qualities and present it to the person, to the others, is the key. Because you can't expect a guy to be positive like 100%, because that's just not human being, right? But exactly what exactly is his combo when it comes to his personality elements determines what kind of feeling you will get from him and how that feeling is going to feel you. So that is the influence we're talking about here.
Interesting. I think there's a really good point in that, and there's a few. As you talk about the influence on you and how it makes you feel, and something that I talk about on my site is the main thing to focus on is the emotions that you give a woman, i.e. the emotional influence you have on her.
I would love to say that we're rational beings. I would love to say that we only make objective observations, but that's really not true. even though sometimes I try to be really objective and rational when it comes to making decisions, I can't help but observing these little times when I was being a little bit emotional, but kind of make the entire decision-making process skew away just because of that. So yes, emotion is important, especially for women. A lot of men don't get it, right? They were thinking, oh, I think women are easy to be satisfied because I can just buy her some Chanel bag or some cosmetics or whatever, right? But that's not the case. You can't be too intrusive, and you can't be too timid. You have to be exactly on balance, which is really difficult.
That it's a balance. So a lot of guys get confused where this balance lies. I think it's pretty easy to find the balance if you get the right mindset. It's assertive without being overbearing,
right?
And calm without being timid.
Well, yeah, and just like the example I just made, there was this guy when I was in Shanghai. There was this guy who apparently we met each other once, and he started pursuing me. And
Who can blame
appreciate
him?
I don't blame him on that point, to be honest. And I appreciate when people tell me that you're pretty, you're attractive, and I'd like to date you, which is good. But the approach that he used was kind of scary, though. For day one, I went to the office and received a package from him. It was a Chanel bag. Day two, I went to the office receiving another mail package, and that was a very expensive set of cosmetics, right? And I honestly didn't even know him, and he also sent me poems in my inbox and stuff, and called me 5 times a day, even though we just met once through a friend. And during that meetup, it wasn't even a date. It was a conversation. It was a dinner with 5 of us, and it was just basically a very random conversation, a very random meeting. And he started pursuing very hard. And one day I went, during one weekend I went to Nanjing. And on my way back to Shanghai, he sent me a message asking, can we meet? I said, well, can't, right? Because I'm out of town. And he asked me, when are you coming back? I said, well, probably 10 p.m. something. And he said, okay, tell me your train number. I can be there and pick you up. I'm like, who are you, right? That's a little scary, because one thing I was really concerned about is, if I keep rejecting this guy, would I run out of the office one day and get stabbed by him? Because yes, that's one of the extreme case of somebody being very intrusive and also very scary that way. But there are also situations when really good guys, okay, they have good qualities, they're humorous as well, but they don't approach you that much, even though you kind of feel like you kind of hope them to, But again, when you're restricting yourself, when you're kind of holding yourself back like that, you're sending out a signal of lack of confidence. So the woman is not going to be attracted to you, regardless how good the other qualities you have, right? Just because if you aren't even if you aren't even confident, right, what can I expect out of you in terms of many other things? So yeah, two extreme cases, too timid versus too intrusive to the very crazy level. But yeah, balance important.
Absolutely. You touched on some really important, interesting things there. One is when the guy's way too overbearing and just being like, "I just met you, but I want you. I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Come with me. I want you now." You start to worry, like, is this guy a psycho? Is he gonna stab me when I leave the office or something, right? And the other guy who, like, he won't make the effort so much. Kind of wonder, like, does this guy have the confidence? Is he really actually interested? Does he care enough to really, like, just come see if this will work out? And it's like almost the opposite spectrum where, like, maybe he has a better personality, but he's not showing he's interested enough to pique your interest and be like, yeah, maybe I'll give that a go.
For the first type, there is a saying called needy is creepy, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's the marketing sales world, but I think it applies well in the relationship field as well. The other type, I would say there's so many ways to interpret that, right? Why would people kind of hold themselves back from getting what they want, not just in a relationship, but also in the business world as well? My understanding is that there is this fear of rejection. Like, I know this person, one of my friends, a guy, who's very smart and who's also very nice person. I know him in person, so that's why I can say that, right? I kind of vouch for him on that. But for years, he would not just step ahead to ask that woman he really desired out, because he was not comfortable with the idea about handling rejection. But he also is not very confident, though. Like, he thinks that I'm probably not tall enough for her. And 2 years later, he finally had this courage to ask her out. And what we were planning is that we're gonna have a little dinner party. So we're gonna kind of invite both of them to the party, and they can kind of mingle and interact with each other and find a good kind of opportunity for that. But 2 days before the party, we heard that the girl was moving to the West Coast. We're in the East Coast. The girl was moving to the West Coast because of a new job opportunity. I mean, if you consider that, right, it's basically, it's like when you finally had this courage to pursue that thing, the game is kind of over even before it started. And it's totally because you let that happen. You've been waiting so long, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
he didn't.
now, yeah, you
Go
didn't
ahead.
even take an initiative. So even now, you go to that girl saying that can we asking her out? You basically leaving her no reason to do it for you, no reason to stay in the East Coast for you, because you're a stranger still, even after 2 years.
That's right. If he had told her ages ago and they had an awesome relationship already, she might have never applied for that job on the West Coast. She might have just been happy staying where she was with the guy. And this reminds me of another hangout I did with Steve. And Steve helps coach introverted guys. And he was talking about how, to him, the one who got away was a woman he was in love with for a year. And finally, again, when he was ready to tell her, she moved away and he never told her.
Yeah.
So she never knows. He says, I always wonder what could have been.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something I tell my students is that if you're not willing to risk losing her, you don't deserve to have her.
I'm totally with you on that.
Totally. It's like gambling. If you don't put the money up, if you're not willing to risk losing the money, you don't get to win the payoff. You got to be willing to risk to win. You got to play to win.
Yeah, yeah. And that's also an opportunity for a guy to kind of develop that personal courage as well, right? Just take that bet and see what happens. Because if you never do it, you will never know what is going to be the possibility, right?
Exactly. So you were talking about how you take into account how a man influences you. And I wrote a post for another site recently all about how women make it a little bit difficult for men in the beginning. Well, actually, all the time, a lot of the time, but especially in the beginning, because they want to test to see his character. Like you said, you don't necessarily want to do it on purpose, but you do want to see what kind of man he is and see how he handles those situations. So instead of being like, oh, yeah, for sure, I'll meet you for a date, you say, I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll get back to you. And it's not that you don't really want to meet him. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But maybe it's kind of you just want to see what he'll do. Maybe he'll be like, oh, please, please, please come with me. I really need you to come with me. I'm so sad if you don't go. And you're like, oh, no, thank you. And maybe he's like, well, okay, I guess I'll find something else fun to do with some other people. Let me know when you're free. And you're like, fuck, I kind of wish I'd taken him up on that. Or maybe he just doesn't respond back to you ever again. And you're like, oh, that guy just doesn't give much of a fuck then. So I'm just not gonna bother getting in touch with him again. Or maybe if you were really rude and you made plans with him and then you flaked on him and then he never talked to you, maybe then you're like, oh, maybe I should get in touch. I was kind of mean. Maybe we'll send him a message, give him a call. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to be mean. How about we meet on Tuesday or something? But the point is that women often do little things to test a man's character to see how he will respond. And if he responds well and shows he has good character, he is confident, he's not deterred, but he's also not going to allow himself to be treated poorly. He's going to stand up and point out what's right, especially what's right to him. Then many times women will go, okay, it's a decent guy. It's a good guy. I'll give him a chance and keep moving forward with it and see what happens. What do you think?
I would say it's more of the psychological tendency than a strategic move.
Well, I think it's a woman's psychological tendency. I think it's a woman thing to do subconsciously. My personal opinion, but go ahead.
The reason is because when somebody just asks you out, you're a woman, right? Somebody just asks you out. You don't really know much about this guy yet. So I would say as an instinct, as a like human instinct, you will want to kind of have a little distance. Like you wouldn't just go into the game without knowing what the game is about, right? So this man coming to ask you out, you want to keep a little distance to kind of vet what does it involve, right? And is it a good situation? Are you in a good life stage to do that? Does the situation allow? And also who that guy really is, right? So you probably like me, in my experience, I would just hold a little distance first, so that I can get a clear grasp of a firm grasp about what exactly the situation is, right?
Okay, so what are you looking for with that distance at first?
It's a process to think through. But think about it clearly, right? Is that guy really serious when he asks you out? And because when I think about relationship, I don't think about having a casual relationship or whatever alternative, the what is it called, the equivalent of it.
I can think of a bad word for it.
It's more of, I'm trying to search a mild word for it. Yes, I try to think about it as a serious commitment from day one. Okay, that's not like I try to actually. It's just how the idea kind of flows out naturally. So when it comes to a serious commitment, you have to think about a few things, right? So first of all, who that person is, right? And what I do is I kind of go back to the different instances when we interacted with each other, and I try to kind of map it out a little bit to see if things are consistent. The other thing is I would probably talk to my friends who also know the guy. Sometimes it's even my friends who doesn't know the guy, but that's fine because I can tell them what exactly is the situation. So I would say it's more about getting assurance. So it's not like what you're trying to get, what I was trying to look for on that guy. It's more about finding assurance from within.
Like assurance for what?
Assurance that this is not going to be a decision that I will probably regret, right, after a few months or after half a year. Because when you get into this, human beings have the natural psychological tendency that when you get into a situation, you have the natural tendency to kind of stick with the consistency. It means that it's hard for you to make a change afterwards. You will have more inertia that holds you back from making a change, even though that situation isn't perfect. Okay. So that's why when you are before you go into the relationship, you have to think about, you have to take things into consideration. That's just my personality. I think that's my way of processing these information to reach a decision. Even though that guy might be very attractive, right? So you have to think about, is that attractiveness also comes with a good influence.
That's true. That's true. So that's why I think it's important for guys to show persistence and not get upset, especially in the beginning, when a woman isn't that responsive, or maybe doesn't reply a message, or maybe doesn't agree to a date, or even if she flakes on a date or something, because she may just be checking to be like, is this guy actually interested in me? Is he going to get easily discouraged? Will he be persistent and be the kind of person who gives up on something that he says he wants, which is me, but then gives up very easily, so therefore does it in the rest of his life?
I don't agree with the act of flaking. I mean, if for any reason that you have to think about this relationship to start with, you might as well just communicate it with better transparency, right? Why would you flake on a date, right? I'm a woman, and I would say that I don't agree with anyone doing that. But you're right in the sense that consistency is good, and if there is any situation where the woman isn't responding positively to your ask, there might be a reason. Just accept it that there is a reason, and you can further ask what the reason is without being too intrusive. Right?
Well,
I
I do agree, but here's the thing. One, that's why you're on this show, because you don't believe in flaking, and that's something quality people don't do. They say, I make a commitment. I said I'm going to do this thing, so I'm going to do this thing. And even if you kind of change your mind, or you kind of don't want to, you say like, okay, I said I'm going to do this, I'm going to go do it, which is, the nice, right thing to do, unless, something major has happened and the guy turned out to be a total creep or something. But whatever. The point is, you're like, I'm going to go do that thing I said I'm going to do. Yes. And I can't remember what else you said now.
I was saying that for a guy, consistency is good, but it's important that you're being consistent. You're being bold. Bold is fine, but you're being respectful at the same time. I mean, women actually, I would say, I can't speak for millions and thousands, millions of women out there, but I actually appreciate boldness, and I feel that's a very strong sign of confidence, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to be demanding and intrusive. So there is a fine line between the two.
Absolutely. I agree. Boldness, assertiveness, and going for what you want unapologetically, but not being domineering and intrusive and annoying in her life.
Yeah.
So you said the consistency is important. And so there's something I learned that I think is very important. It's called the 4 times rule, which means whatever you ask for, you ask 4 times. Because by the 4th time you ask, if it's still no, it's a hard no. Okay. If by the 1st time maybe it's so, second maybe it's wavering, third maybe, 4th time it's like, so you're really not sure about this. At one point they might just beg up, fuck it, fine, we'll give it a go, fine, let's see, and that could be the in you need. So that sort of consistency in going for what one wants in life, regardless of the situation, whether it be with women, whether it be in business, whether it be in your personal life. That sort of assertiveness, which is not overbearing, is the sort of courage and determination and not getting deterred by negative results that will allow someone to keep moving forward.
That's true. And in a relationship, I would say that being assertive and being consistent can really help you turn the game, even if you got a rejection to start with. Because each time when you're being assertive and consistent, you are actually displaying one more quality that the girl who rejected you might not have seen before.
Exactly, and set you apart. Because so many guys, they get rejected once, they go, "Oh, okay, forget it. I'm a
It's
loser," and they give
personal.
up, and they feel bad about themselves. But if he would just give it another shot, and give it another shot, and she's like, "Oh, this guy's legit. Like he's gonna keep coming and give it another shot." She'll be like, "Fine, fine, I'll give it a go." And then she opens up, and they have a good time, and he leads the way, and she goes, "This is a man that I can enjoy traveling down some sort of path with. It could be a good adventure. Let's check it out." And now it's a nice opportunity. Whereas if you just give it up on the first go, well, if you give up on your first go in anything in life, you're probably not going to make it very far. You're probably not going to climb any sort of success ladder whatsoever. Because setbacks are just a part of life.
And we were also talking about dealing with stress, right? Like the way you can see someone's maturity is to see how this person deals with stress and adversity and rejection. So.
Exactly. So that's another thing I meant to circle back around on. So as I was talking about the quality women before who I kind of lost because I was too like, oh, yeah, come back to my place. Let's kind of trying to find ways to get it on as opposed to just enjoy us having that time and being able to meet again and maybe have that move forward naturally. She could tell that like, well, why is he so set on getting laid so soon? Like, we're enjoying a good thing. Why can't we just let that happen? And it's that kind of maturity, that responsibility, that patience, and that persistence where it's like, okay, I'm not going to swing for the home run on every swing because I don't have to get the home run. I just got to get a base hit and then another base hit and then another base hit, and then another base hit, and I got home. And your chances of getting 4 base hits as opposed to 1 home run are so much higher. And like you said, that's consistency. So a woman can then count on you to be consistent in getting those base hits, and she knows what to expect. And says, well, my man generally hits a base hit, so I'll set him up to get a base hit, and he'll do it. And every now and then you knock one out of the park and surprise her, and she goes, yeah, that's my man. That's what I think is different about dating quality women as opposed to your average woman you kind of just want to hook up with, but you're not interested in anything more really long-term with, is that consistency of showing up to build the relationship and make it good for her and you. What do you think?
That's part of it. It's a very important part of it because it shows, like I said, it shows personal strength. But it's probably the only factor for the formula. It sounds like I'm making it very tough. I'm sorry for that, but really,
I don't want to say that women make things overly complicated. We would never make a stereotypical joke like
things
that.
are not easy, right? If you're talking about having a long-term good relationship with having a quality relationship, I would say that you have to make the effort first, right? And I don't know, like for me, another thing that I look into a guy is, I'll say intellectual stimulation, because it's not for everyone, I think. But for me,
I think it's
really
for most people. It's for most women. There's very few people who like being bored, I think, so.
Yeah, so what happens is if you just, like you said, if you just pursue somebody and trying to get into the home run, all of a sudden you're kind of boring.
Yeah, because you know what to expect, right? You know what they're going for.
What do you mean? Sorry,
Like,
what did you say?
Yeah, like you know what to expect then, because you know they're gonna go for the home run every time. So it's like there's no suspense in it.
The other thing is that don't you have other things to show me instead of your like basic biological function?
I mean, you want to know about the biological functions eventually, but like, yes, is there more to go with that for sure?
Well, that should be guaranteed, right? That should be a part of the package, guaranteed. Why are you showing me when you're making an offer, you try to show the best selling point, right? Not the basic thing.
Here's my offer. Intriguing. What does that come with? What's the add-on for that? What's my bonus extra? Sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, that's why I think it's boring. If a guy and a girl has nothing else to talk about but sex, right? basically, you can have sex with anyone, right? Why does it have to be you? You have to think about it. What is your role? What is the role that you want to play in a relationship? Because a lot of people are asking about, I want to date a good woman, and what is going to be the role of that woman, and what is the woman like, etc. I think the first step is to map out what exactly is the role that you want to play in a relationship in order to figure out all the other questions.
This is a really good point.
This is really the dependency here, right? Because what the woman is going to be like has to be compatible with what role you want to play. But like not a lot of people think about that.
This is true. So actually, one of the first things I have my students do is fill out a survey describing their ideal relationship. So then they can have an idea of what they're aiming for. Doesn't mean it has to end up like that. Doesn't mean she has to fit every single one of those characteristics. But the point is that if you're aiming in that direction, you get something near that, or even say you get exactly that, and you go, oh, actually, I kind of made a mistake. That's not exactly the relationship I really want, actually. Then you know what you want to change. But until you get that, that's your idea of what's the best. And you could be mistaken your entire life, maybe, trying to chase that until you get it. So I agree. Figuring out your role and her role, like in a relationship, is very important. You know, even if it's not like, I don't want to say that this is like, you know, immediately long term, you're getting married right away, because you know, I think when you put that much pressure right away, it can sabotage the relationship, kind of like inflating stock prices artificially. You know, it's not real. But I think if you're setting it up so that you're dating women that could potentially become that, as opposed to just dating women you're like, I'd like to hook up, but like, I know that's it. but if you're giving yourself options with women where you know you could potentially want a relationship, well, now you have some great options to choose from to create that. And so you're more likely to get towards it. Yeah, that was.
So that goes back to another point you just raised. It's one point of conversation. You said you attract who you are, right? I think it probably needs a slight tweak into you attract who you are and who you want to become.
You attract who you are and who you want to become?
Exactly. Like, you have to think about the room for development there, because what you mentioned just now at the beginning of the conversation, that a lot of people's definition of having a quality relationship and finding a good woman is to find a good woman with whom you can grow together, right? And you have to consider that room for development there as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. My thoughts on that are, though, that if you find a woman that you can grow with, that's very important, something to take into consideration when you're looking. But that one can't really consider that the woman or person they're with right now is going to be someone that wants to grow with them, because that person may just be comfortable with how they are right now. And if you grow and they don't grow, now it's a little bit different. So a lot of times people grow in different directions or at different paces or whatever. So this can lead to an issue in the relationship.
That's why this country has a 50% of divorce rate.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think a large part of it is that people settle because they don't want to risk rejection, and they don't want to go through the hard personal growth required to find someone that they would really, really want to be with in the long term. So they go, you'll sleep with me, I'll sleep with you. Okay, let's get together and not sleep with anyone else. And they have their issues, and it's not entirely healthy, and their dysfunction matches their dysfunction, but it lasts for X amount of time. And then unfortunately, a lot of the times, like marriage and kids and stuff come involved, and it breaks because it was never that healthy to begin with. Whereas if they had a bunch of awesome options, they said, I think you're the best amongst my awesome options. Said, I think you're the best amongst my awesome options too. Like, okay, let's go together and grow and see how this goes. They go, okay. And it turns out that it goes quite well, most likely, not guaranteed, but I think that's the best bet, as opposed to the, I just don't want to be single and alone, so I'm going to take the first person who will be with me. that sounds like a really bad play. You would never do that in like your job or something. You'd never be fulfilled. Be like, I'm not going to go for my dream job. I'll take whatever first job comes to me. And now you're a janitor, but you signed up to be a janitor for your whole life. And now you have little janitor children. And maybe that wasn't what you really wanted. Maybe you wanted, you know, a little better, healthier, more ambitious job for yourself, but you weren't willing to take the risk. So you didn't deserve it. You didn't get it.